Hello, everyone. I'm Ethan, and today we are going to be reading the story of John 2, where he actually goes to the wedding and sees Jesus perform two miracles. One, turning water into wine, and two, saving the party. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chef's steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Our second lesson today is an excerpt from The Service Berry by Robin Wall Kimmerer.
That's correct.
The cool breath of the evening slips off the wooded hills, displacing the heat of the day, and with it come the birds, as eager for the cool as I am. They arrive in a flock of calls that sound like laughter, and I have to laugh back with the same delight. They are all around me, cedar waxwings and catbirds, and a flash of bluebird iridescence. I have never felt such a kinship to my namesake, Robin, as in this moment when we are both stuffing our mouths with berries and chortling with happiness. The bushes are laden with fat clusters of red, blue, and wine purple in every stage of ripeness. So many, you can pick them by the handful. I'm glad to have a pail, and it's easy, and it's getting pretty heavy. The birds carry their berries in the buckets of their bellies, and I wonder if they will be able to fly with so much cargo. This abundance of berries feels like a pure gift from the land. I have not earned, paid for, nor labored for them. There is no mathematics of worthiness that reckons I deserve them in any way. And yet, here they are, along with the sun and the air and the birds and the rain. You could call them natural resources or ecosystem services, but the robins, and I know them as gifts. We both sing gratitude with our mouths full.
The English Enlightenment poet Alexander Pope wrote of the story of the wedding at Cana, "The conscious water sees its master and blushes." I like the quote for a number of reasons. By giving water consciousness, Pope reveals his understanding of the humble relationship between creator and creation. It brings emotion to the story that John doesn't seem to, at least in English translation. I don't sense much emotion in John's telling of the story. And by speaking of this story from the Gospel of John so poetically, Pope invites us to read John's story poetically. This is important to me because I don't think John was trying to record history. The fourth gospel, as I interpret it, is about theology and spirituality. Did Jesus ever attend weddings? Sure. Did he ever attend a wedding in Cana? It's 4 miles from Nazareth. Probably. Maybe he was dragged along by his mom and dad like I was when I was 2. Did he ever actually turn water into wine at a wedding? It doesn't matter. The history, the literality of the story is not what's important. What matters is the truth that's under the story, the truth that's in the story, the truth that is in that space between the letters and between the lines, between the words. We're going to do a little Bible study today, folks. The lectionary, the 3-year cycle of scripture readings assigned for each Sunday of the year, doesn't give the Gospel of John its due. Year A of the 3-year cycle focuses on Matthew's Gospel. Year B focuses on Mark's Gospel. Year C focuses on Luke's Gospel. And then it's time to go back to Year A. And so John sort of gets scattered in there, here and there, little stories stuck into among the other readings each year. We're currently in Year C. And today's reading from John is one of those sprinklings. This story is, I think, dropped in the right spot of the church year. January 6th is Epiphany, the day we celebrate the arrival of the Magi from the east to pay homage to the child Jesus. We use the word epiphany to mean a sudden recognition, a sudden understanding, a sudden grasping of reality or truth. It means to have an aha moment. The church celebrates January 6th as Epiphany because the Magi had this understanding of the reality of who Jesus is. It's a revealing of Jesus' identity. The Sunday that follows Epiphany is the Baptism of Jesus Sunday. And if he had any questions about who he was going into his baptism, they get answered in the baptism stories. He hears God speak to him. Jesus hears God say, "You are my beloved child, with you I am well pleased." It's another story revealing who Jesus is. And today we get this story about Jesus revealing who he is to others. This story is how John tells us that Jesus began his public ministry. Next week, we'll look at how Luke tells us Jesus began his public ministry. It is a very different story. This week, the story is about Jesus revealing who he is by making the water blush. One of the ways to look at the narrative arc of the Gospel of John is to see it as being organized around 7 signs that reveal Jesus' identity and mission. Signs is the word that John uses, not miracles. He calls them signs. Turning the water into wine is the first of these signs. It is common in storytelling for the first instance of a repeated motif to set up the tone of what will follow, to introduce the major themes to come. By calling these events signs, John gives us a clue to their purpose. They are supposed to catch our attention, maybe even catch our breath, drawing us toward what it is, what for John is the whole point of his gospel, life with and in God. But amazement doesn't always work that way. One commentator put it, "It's only too easy to get caught up in the miraculous and miss the larger purpose, pulling the car over, so to speak, to ooh and ah at the roadside, pointing toward our destination, instead of moving toward the destination itself." It turns out that John returns to this tension throughout his gospel. There are several times that Jesus scolds the crowds or his disciples or both for focusing too much on the signs and not enough on what they are pointing to. In chapter 4, just 2 chapters later in John's gospel, in the scene featuring the second sign, we hear Jesus roll his eyes. It is that loud. Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. You can hear Jesus saying in exasperation. Chapter 6, he tells them not to fixate on how he fed 5,000 with just a few loaves of bread. Don't look at the loaves of bread, Jesus says. Look at the bread of life. Notice that I am the bread of life. This tension between dazzling signs and genuine belief persists in John's gospel until the very end, culminating in the risen Christ's encounter with Thomas. And he says, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe." So let's get back to the first sign. Hopefully we don't get so wowed by it that we forget to look at what it's pointing to. Jesus has started calling his disciples at the end of chapter 1. And then this wedding is held in Cana. I think it's safe to assume that, as far as John's gospel is concerned, Jesus is still largely unknown, though known well enough by the family of the bride or the groom to invite him and to tell him that he can bring his disciples along to the wedding. Mary, Jesus' mother, is there too. I think it's interesting that Mary appears exactly twice in John's gospel, here at the very beginning of his public ministry, and the other time is at the foot of the cross at the end of his public ministry. Neither the bride nor the groom, nor their families for that matter, show up in the narrative of this story. They are almost a vehicle for the bringing of Jesus and Mary together and this first sign. It's not important that they're really there. The fact that Mary is concerned about the wine running out may mean that John wants us to think that this is a wedding of a family member, a relative in some way. Or maybe John simply wants us to think that Mary is very observant. She notices that the wine ran out. Culturally, however, in the ancient world, running out of wine at a wedding feast was more than a mere inconvenience. Wedding celebrations often lasted a week. The wine was considered an essential mark of hospitality and not to mention a key social lubricant for the joy of the occasion. Running out of wine certainly would be a major embarrassment to the host family. Now, the shortage may also have indicated that both the family and the attendees lacked resources, since wedding guests apparently would often bring wine as a contribution to the revelry. So maybe John is letting us know that this is a relatively modest, humble gathering of ordinary folk. Jesus initially dismisses his mother's suggestion that he fix this problem. How is this our problem, he says. And depending on the tone of voice you hear when you read it, he can sort of sound a little like a whiny teenager. I love Mary's response. She dismisses his dismissal. She turns to a servant and just says, "Do what he tells you to do." It is as if she has already decided she has won the argument. What isn't clear is what Mary sees that Jesus wasn't seeing yet, that made her feel that she needed to get him involved in fixing this problem. Is she concerned about the host family's reputation? Does she see in this dilemma a golden opportunity for Jesus to inaugurate his ministry? And if she sees this as an opportunity to inaugurate his ministry, how did she know that he could fix the problem to begin with? John says this is the first of his signs. One theory is that Jesus must have been performing miracles around the house from time to time. And I saw a social media post that supports this idea. It claims that Jesus' parents realized that he was divine when he completed a carpentry project without needing to return to the Home Depot even once. Now, maybe John wants us to think about the Hebrew prophet's use of wine as a symbol of restoration, and in particular for the ultimate restoration of the new era to come, the eschatological feast of joy and gladness. Maybe turning water into wine is the perfect sign for the arrival of this new era, and that's what John is pointing us to. A wedding is already an archetype of joyous feasting. 6 stone jars holding 20 to 30 gallons of water each make these stone jars look small. Six stone jars of 20 to 30 gallons filled to the brim with wine. A picture of abundance for the sake of the joyful community, if ever there was one, both then and now. And I think it's a window through which we can glimpse the abundant life that is at the heart of Jesus' mission, according to John. Notice who it is in this story who knows what's going on. Jesus' astonishing work is revealed not to the groom and bride, not to the host family. It's the servants who know what's going on, the nobodies working behind the scenes, the catering staff who know. Yes, Jesus goes public here, but he's really only going public to the people who are working away in the kitchen. Jesus' choice of the vessel, too, is no accident. These water jars were used for purification rites, such as hand washing, turning this water into wine. Water for rituals of purification into wine, following the ancient prophets to emphasize joy and abundance over the common religious temptation, both then and now, to focus on purity. Washing your hands remains important, but not as important as joy, as abundant, joyful life. These 25 gallons of fine wine are a sacramental glimpse of what Jesus in chapter 10 of John's Gospel puts this way: I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Conventional wisdom says that resources are scarce. Conventional wisdom says that it is a dog-eat-dog world, and that even the best planned weddings run out of wine. Then Jesus comes along, and he lets the invisible people, the nobodies of the world, in on a secret. In his economy, there's plenty for everybody. And he lets us in on that secret too. The sign of water turned into wine is an invitation into the joy that Robin Kimmerer expressed in that excerpt you heard earlier today from the service berry. This abundance of berries feels like a pure gift from the land. I've not earned, paid for, nor labored for them. There is no mathematics of worthiness that reckons I deserve them in any way, and yet here they are, along with the sun and the air, the birds and the rain. You could call them natural resources or ecosystem services, but the robins and I know them as gifts. And we both sing gratitude with our mouths full. Tomorrow we will celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the day when all kinds of people, especially oligarchs, will pretend that King never said things like, "You can't talk about solving the economic problem of the Negro without talking about billions of dollars. You can't talk about ending the slums without saying profit must be taken out of the slums. You're really tampering and getting on dangerous ground because you are messing with folks then. You are messing with captains of industry." Now, this means that we are treading in difficult waters because it really means that we are saying that there is something wrong with capitalism. The consumptive economy of this world thrives on the oppression of some people, and it stands in sharp contrast to the economy of Jesus, where there is enough for everyone, and the oppressed are the first to notice it. So today I pray for a hope beyond hope, to use Paul's term. I pray for a hope beyond hope, a hope not grounded in the likelihood of desired outcome, but a hope grounded in the love that I know in Jesus and the love that I have for humanity and creation, that it will fill my house and your house. I pray for a hope that holds the vision of abundant life for all creation, a hope that carries Jesus' mission, will fill my house and yours. I pray for a hope that, though it may not provide a way through, will provide a way forward, will fill my house and yours. Amen.